Have you ever had the experience of being somewhere, a room, a conversation, a moment in your life, and suddenly feeling like a stranger? Not a stranger to the place, a stranger to yourself. Like you looked around and thought, how did I get here? When did I become this person? What happened to the version of me that used to? And then there was something you could not quite finish. Something you used to know about yourself that you could no longer clearly find. Hi, friends. Welcome back to English with Moon. Tonight, I want to talk about something I think many of us experience, and very few of us name: the experience of losing yourself and the long, quiet journey of finding your way back. Losing yourself rarely happens in a single moment. It happens gradually, in small accommodations and quiet surrenders, in the habit of saying yes when you meant no, in choosing what was easier over what was true, in fitting yourself into the shape that a relationship or a family or a job or a culture required, and doing it so consistently for so long that you began to forget there was another shape underneath. It happens in the years of being very, very busy. When you are so focused on what needs to be done, the responsibilities, the obligations, the demands of other people, that your own inner life becomes something you will get to later. When things slow down, when there is more time, but there is never more time, and the inner life, untended, begins to go quiet. It happens in grief, or in a great love, or in a long stretch of difficulty that required all of you just to survive, with nothing left over for the parts of yourself that weren't strictly necessary. It is not a failure. It is something that happens to almost everyone at some point in a life. But it is worth noticing, and it is worth caring about. I want to tell you about a man named James. James was 41 when he realized he had no idea what he actually liked. Not in a crisis. He wasn't having a breakdown. He was simply sitting on a Sunday afternoon with an unusual amount of free time, and he thought, I should do something I enjoy. And then, startlingly, he could not think of what that was. He had spent 15 years building a career. He had spent several years in a relationship that had taken a great deal of his energy. He had obligations to his family, to his friends, to the various roles he played in his life that he met consistently, reliably, well. But somewhere in the accumulation of all of that, he had stopped noticing what he, James, specifically enjoyed. What made him feel like himself. What he would choose purely for himself, with no one watching and no benefit to anyone else. He sat for a long time. He could not answer the question. He thought of things he used to do years ago. He used to read a lot, long novels on weekends, books he had no practical reason to read, just books that interested him. When had he stopped? He could not say exactly. It had happened gradually. The books had moved to the bedside table, then to a shelf, then to a storage box when he moved apartments. He thought of places he used to go, a small park near his first apartment that he had visited every Sunday morning without particular reason, just because he liked it there. He had not been to any park like that in years. He had not thought to go. He thought of friends he had drifted from, not because of any falling out, simply because keeping up with people had started to feel like one more obligation in a life of obligations. And he had let those threads go quietly, one by one. He sat for a long time. He could not answer the question, and that scared him more than almost anything had in years. There are quiet signs that you have drifted from yourself. You find it hard to answer simple questions about what you want. Not complex questions, not what do you want from life, but simple ones. What do you feel like eating? What would you like to do today? What do you actually think about this? You feel vaguely restless, but can't locate what you're restless for. Like an itch you can't place, a hunger for something you can't name. You notice that you are much better at knowing what other people need from you than knowing what you need for yourself. You are a careful reader of the room, of the person in front of you, of what is expected. But when the room is empty and there is no one to read, you feel a little lost. You find yourself doing things because you've always done them, rather than because you actually want to. Your life has a shape, a routine, a set of habits and roles that you maintain, but that you can no longer remember choosing. These are not catastrophes, but they are worth paying attention to. They are the sound of someone, you asking to be found. Coming home to yourself does not happen in a retreat or a dramatic revelation. It happens in small moments of honest attention. James started with something simple. He decided that once a week, he would do something with no purpose other than that he wanted to do it. Not networking, not self-improvement, not something useful or productive. Just, this is something I'm curious about. I want to see what it's like. He tried things and found they weren't for him. He tried other things and found, to his surprise, that something lit up. He remembered, slowly, things he had known about himself a long time ago and then forgotten. Things that had always been there, waiting. He said, "It felt like finding rooms in my own house that I had forgotten existed. Not new rooms, old ones. His rooms that had been closed and dark for years and just needed the lights turned on." Coming home to yourself is not about becoming someone new. It is about returning to someone you have always been, who has been waiting patiently for you to have the time and attention to come back. Every month, the moon disappears entirely. For a few nights, the sky is dark where it used to be. And then, quietly, without announcement, it begins to return. A thin sliver of light, then more, then the familiar fullness. It does not return to a different moon. It returns to itself. Coming home to yourself is like that. You have not become someone else during the time you were lost. You have not been replaced. The essential you, the one that was there before the busyness, before the drift, before the years of performing, is still there, waiting to return, or rather, waiting for you to return to it. So how do you come home? I want to offer some small, honest suggestions. Notice what makes you feel like yourself, not what makes you feel productive or useful or good by someone else's standards. What makes you feel like you, the specific texture of being alive that feels most like you. Is it a particular kind of conversation? A certain kind of light at a certain time of day? The feeling of making something with your hands? A specific kind of music that you haven't listened to in years because you got busy? Pay attention, not philosophically, practically. What specific things, when you do them, make you feel most like yourself? Start there. Notice when you are performing versus when you are present. We all perform in different contexts, to different degrees. That is not always a problem. But notice when the performance becomes total, when there is no version of your day that is simply you, unmanaged, unperforming, and give yourself a small amount of time regularly where there is no performance required. Even 10 minutes where you are simply present with yourself without an audience to please. Ask the small questions, not who am I, not what is the meaning of my life. Those questions are too big, and they tend to produce anxiety rather than answers. Instead, ask small ones. What do I actually think about this? What do I actually feel right now, underneath what I'm supposed to feel? What do I genuinely want in this small moment? The small questions, asked consistently, add up to something. There is also something I want to say about pace. Coming home to yourself is not an urgent project. Many of us approach it the way we approach everything else. With efficiency, with a timeline, with the hope that if we work hard enough and fast enough, we can get back to ourselves by the end of the month. But that is not how it works. Coming home happens in small moments over a long time. It is more like tending a garden than completing a task. You do not finish it. You return to it, season after season, and the returning itself is the practice. James did not have a revelation. He had a Sunday with maps. Then a week later, he cooked slowly. Then, a few weeks after that, he started writing. None of these moments was transformative on its own, but together, over months, they composed something. He said, I started to feel less like a stranger in my own life, not because anything dramatically changed, but because I was doing small things that were mine. Specific things that reminded me that I had a self not just a schedule. That is what the practice of returning actually looks like. Not a journey with a destination, a series of small, true moments, each one bringing you a little closer to the person who has been waiting for you to come back. I want to tell you what James found in those rooms of himself he had forgotten. He found that he had always loved maps. Not digital maps, paper ones, the old kind, with contour lines and hand-drawn coastlines. He had had a collection of them as a child and had thrown them away at some point in his 20s because they were impractical. He bought one for an area he had never been. He spread it on his kitchen table for an hour on a Sunday afternoon and felt something he could only describe as quietly happy. Not elated, not transformed, quietly happy. He found that he liked cooking slowly. Not the efficient kind of cooking that produces dinner in 20 minutes. The kind where you stand at the counter for an hour, taking your time with each thing, listening to something in the background, tasting as you go. He had not cooked slowly in years. He began. He found that he missed writing. Not for work. He wrote plenty for work. But the other kind. The kind with no audience. Notes to himself, observations, the beginnings of things that went nowhere. He began keeping a small notebook. None of these were dramatic discoveries. None of them changed his life immediately, but they were his, genuinely, specifically his. And finding them felt like finding himself. He said, "I think I always believed that coming home to yourself would be this big revelation. But it was just small things, specific things, things I had always loved and forgotten to keep. The rooms are still yours, even after years of being closed. Even the things you have forgotten, they are still waiting." I want to say this to you directly. Dear friend, I think you know the feeling I've been describing tonight. The sense of being a little far from yourself, of having gone through a long period of busyness or difficulty or performance, and of having arrived on the other side slightly unsure of who you are now. I want to say something. You haven't disappeared. You are still there. The most essential parts of you, the things that make you specifically, irreplaceably you, did not vanish during the years you weren't paying attention to them. They went quiet. They waited. They are still waiting. And the path back to them is not dramatic. It is made of small moments of honest attention, of doing one thing this week just because it's yours, of asking yourself once what you actually think, not what you're supposed to think, not what would be easier to think, but what you actually, genuinely think, of coming back to yourself the way you would come home after a long time away, slowly opening doors, remembering you are not lost beyond finding. You are one small, honest moment away from beginning to return with so much care. Moon. 3 small things before tonight ends. Losing yourself is not a failure. It happens in the accumulation of ordinary life, busyness, obligation, love, grief, survival. Notice it without judgment and begin to come back. Coming home to yourself is not about becoming someone new. It is about remembering someone who has been there all along. The rooms are still yours. They just need the lights turned on. And ask the small questions. Not who am I, that one is too large. But what do I actually want right now? What do I actually think? What makes me feel like myself? Follow the small, honest answers back to where you left yourself. Thank you for being here with me tonight. This is English with Moon. And if tonight's episode felt like something you needed, if you recognized yourself somewhere in these words, I hope it helps you find your way a little closer to home. Share it with someone who might need it too. What is one small, honest thing you actually want right now? If you're comfortable, leave it in the comments. Sometimes saying it is the first light turning on. And come back next time. There is always more to explore together. Until then, turn on one small light. Follow it home. Good night, friends.